Hello everyone and welcome to Tag Talks Next Up in Fashion, the podcast for fashion designers, emerging fashion brands and fashion industry news. I'm Nick Sutton-Smith.
I'm Jenae Green.
And I'm Aasia Sterling.
Excited to get stuck into what we're going to be discussing today, which, if all of our wires are matching up, should be the future of the fashion industry.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's do it.
It's one of those things where the future of any industry is sort of something that you could revisit week in, week out. But I think fashion is one of those where it absolutely, you could do it on a day-by-day basis, almost revisit the topic with all of the changes that happen. How do you see the state of it in a very, very quickly, just so we've got somewhere where we can set off from? Where do you see it sitting now, I suppose, within culture and just maybe within itself, if that makes any sense to anyone?
Yeah, I kind of see fashion as way at the back of people's minds at the moment. They're stressed out about a lot of different things, what they're going to wear, where they're going to go and wear these things is not really at the forefront of their minds, but I think it will be soon. And I think that brands and businesses need to be prepared for when things do kind of start to get back to normal and there is this big surge in people wanting to experience all the things that they missed out on when they were on lockdown or they were socially distancing or working from home. So I think now, although the industry is struggling, I think now is the time to innovate and kind of rethink your business model, rethink your strategy and how you communicate to customers and really kind of build something that's quite agile next year.
And I think people forget that the fashion industry isn't just ready to wear and couture and things like that. Loungewear and activewear is seeing a huge spike because, that's all I bought in the past 6 months, comfortable clothes, things that I can wear to bed, but also wear when I work from home. So I think that brands are pivoting and maybe taking a little bit more of a casual approach to their collections and, actually diving into activewear if that's not something that they were pursuing before. So I think that it's been reimagined a bit, but I totally agree with Aasia. I think that people are hungry to wear their dresses and to wear their heels and to get dressed up again. So I think that it's definitely going to make a comeback, and it's going to make a comeback in a major way. So this is totally a good time for brands to just reimagine what their strategy is going to be when the world does open back up.
So do you think that athleisure and comfier clothing is something that brands can transition into now? Or do you think that the boat has sort of passed and that they should try and focus on the next thing that's going to come along in the fashion industry?
I personally think if you haven't tapped into it yet, maybe don't bother. I think that focus on what your brand should be and what you want it to be. But if you're a brand that maybe pivoted a little bit early on and you added loungewear when you didn't have it before back in June, for example, then that's great. But I think that to try to hop in now when we're kind of all over it, if that makes sense, it doesn't seem worth it to me. I don't know. What do you think, Aasia?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think if you've managed to kind of carve yourself out a niche in these really saturated areas of sportswear and loungewear and even pajamas and nightwear, then yeah, I think stick to it and see kind of where it gets you. But if you're kind of thinking now because it's a trend that you're going to do it, then maybe it's not the most natural or organic thing for you to do, and you might not get the most organic kind of following or sales from it.
And so as we get to the end of 2020 and look forward to 2021, obviously early on you've got the fashion weeks throughout February, sort of like a fashion month, I suppose. How do you think that month and the various different fashion weeks are going to affect how the fashion industry moves forward?
I think last fashion month, no one was kind of prepared or no one kind of knew what they were doing. Me personally, I didn't see a single show. It wasn't really big news on anything compared to what I'm usually seeing on my Instagram and Facebook, any of my social media. So I was kind of shocked to think, oh, it's Fashion Week this week, that I haven't seen anything going on. So I think the coming fashion month is going to be a lot more digital, a lot more interactive, a lot more experiential, and people are going to have kind of gotten into their stride when it comes to presenting their new collections.
I didn't tune into anything. I really was so out of touch with what was going on. And I also think a lot of brands were as well. I think a lot of brands sat this one out as well, which is why there wasn't as much content going around. We didn't see as much on social media. So I think that this particular fashion week, it's been almost a year that we've been in this current situation that we're in. So they've gotten time to figure out how if they want to present their collection, how they're going to do it. They've gotten time to figure out how to work this digital space that they weren't really familiar with before. Some brands are doing things like showing on social media, showing on TikTok and on Instagram. So I think that now they've kind of gotten their ducks in a row and they've gotten their strategy together for how they can present their collection. But I also think that this coming fashion week is going to change fashion weeks in the future. We will go back to in-person shows and to that whole thing that everyone so badly desires. But I think that there's going to be this digital shift as well for the brands that can't. Fashion week really is expensive. It's expensive for brands to show. It costs a lot of money, and this digital production is a way to cut on costs. So I think that this is definitely, and depending how you do it, you can spend a ton of money doing a digital show, but you could also cut back. So I think that this could be a really great way for brands to show that maybe can't afford the high price tag that comes with showing at Fashion Week.
Are there any brands that you've seen that have really nailed the adopting the digital approach to fashion weeks in general, but like more broadly showcasing their work?
Yeah, there's a designer. Her name is Anifa, but her brand is Hanifa. And she showed her collection in this 3D way, like back in, I want to say, April or May. It was really early on.
Right at the start of everything.
Yeah, and I think that way everyone was so impressed with her showing, and especially because she wasn't one of these big name brands that everyone is so familiar with. She's a little bit more of a she has a following. It's not as mass. So I think when she did it so early on, everyone was really impressed. And I think it kind of inspired other brands as well. And I love the fact it was first of all, she's a Black woman. So I love the fact that it was a Black woman that was kind of paving the way for other brands to reimagine how they're going to show their collections and to not be discouraged by the current global climate. But I think that the way that she showed with these 3D models and on Instagram Live was just so appropriate for the time they're in.
I even saw an article about her on the BBC. Someone shared it with me and was like, this is amazing. I was like blown away by kind of just how quickly she kind of did it. And the clothes were like beautiful as well. I wanted them.
Gorgeous. I know. And I think it's just so good for her because I think that she did get picked up by a lot of media outlets highlighting the way that she showed, which was such great exposure for her because it was also during a time it wasn't Fashion Week. She kind of her own time that she wanted to show. So I think that was a great moment for her to really, it was a great PR move. Whoever her PR team is deserves a pat on the back.
It's not really been digital collections per se, but just kind of how people are using technology. I know like in the UK, there's Holition and then there's the Fashion Innovation Agency, and they're doing really, really cool stuff with AR and VR. And then I think it was Marni who did an AI collection where they like put all of their looks into this AI algorithm and it created new looks for them for their new collection. I thought that was really, really amazing. And I thought it was kind of a step forward into kind of how we can integrate technology into design thinking. So I'm really excited to kind of see, now you said that they've got their ducks in a row, where they're going to actually take it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, I know you guys are more in the industry than I am. It kind of feels like now is a time, maybe COVID aside, maybe this was happening anyway, where it's easier and easier and easier for these smaller designers and these smaller brands to really make a big statement. I know just off the top of my head in a menswear scenario, all I've been seeing on my social media has been a brand called Cole Buxton, who are I think they're really blowing up now, but I know they started as a smaller brand and they specialize in like sweatpants, like you've said, and really cozy clothes, and they kind of rode the wave very well. And they are kind of making almost as big a splash as the big design houses of France and Italy and the big design houses of old. Do you think that is a trend that's going to carry on? Do you think it's going to get easier?
For like the newer emerging brands?
Yeah, for brands that are emerging now.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think that this is a time where I think people are almost looking for something new. I think the more established brands are always going to be there. You know, some of them will move on and some of them will just always be there and they're always going to have a following and a fan base. But I think people are ready for a little bit of a discovery and to find something new. And I think that this is when these new emerging brands should really, really take advantage of this moment where people are looking for something a little bit more progressive and a little bit more fresh. I don't know if fresh is the best word, but just different. I think that people want something really different during this time. This time has been so different for all of us. And I was speaking with someone recently, Stephen Laundy, for the webinar that we did for the House of Tag. And, you know, he said that this is a really good time for brands to start, for brands to emerge in the industry. And I thought that was a really interesting statement that he made. But he said it's kind of this moment where the new guard is able to enter, and you know, the old guard is kind of allowing for that to happen. You know, some houses have closed, some retail stores have closed. So I think that this is a really great moment for entry into the industry.
I 100% agree. When you said discovery, I think you hit the nail on the head. I know, as someone who's a fashion lover, discovery and being able to like find a new brand or designer that like not a lot of people know about and not a lot of people are going to own is something that really, really excites me, and is something that I'm going to continue to look for. I think people are getting more and more individual. They don't want to be part of a herd. They don't want to be told what to wear. So finding those really small direct-to-consumer brands that are really Instagrammable and really kind of pop out at you, something that you haven't seen before, are really going to take off.
I think that's the best, is to be able to discover a brand and then tell your friends about it, or, you know, tell your coworkers about it. And yeah, I personally, and I think most fashion girls, hate wearing the same thing as someone else. So when you do find these brands and you know that no one else is going to be wearing the same thing as you, and people are going to be asking you where you got your thing, that's like so fulfilling for someone who's actually interested in fashion. So this is a really great time for people to be able to discover these new and smaller startup brands.
Yeah, we've kind of covered, I think, how the future of the fashion industry looks almost on face value. That slightly demeans it a little. I don't mean to. But I think 2020 has sort of put a lot of the issues in fashion on the back burner. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking like sustainability, and specifically sustainable manufacturing within the fashion industry. I haven't really heard much about, in the past year, innovations on like that front. I don't know if you guys have any insights as to where you think the future of fashion manufacturing's heading.
Fashion Revolution put out something today about how search engine searches looking for cheap clothes has like risen like 40%. Because people are financially burdened and they just want to buy fast fashion. They want to buy cheap fashion, something that they can afford. So I think that sustainability has been put on the back burner quite a bit. I think it's still important to people, but it's not really at the forefront of their minds now when they're shopping. And I think that's something that we're going to have to kind of bring back in and get people used to again. But then I do think, again, there are barriers to sustainable fashion, like pricing. So when these consumers are they're in a country that's having economic crisis, or they're furloughed and they're not sure about their jobs, making sure that they can buy products that are affordable to them is probably what's most important to them. So if they can be sustainable, then great. But if not, then that might not really bother them.
It feels like the sort of thing that can jump back quite quickly. Like, I feel like we've sort of, even before 2020, we've made the steps to getting it in the public conscience whenever they're buying clothes. So it might have taken a back seat, but I feel like it's not going to take the years and years that it had done previously to get back to where we were. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I totally agree. I almost think it's almost like dieting, where it's like, you know that you should eat this, but it's like when no one's watching, you're like, I want to eat this. So it's like right now when people are financially burdened, you're like, I know I should be shopping sustainable, and I know I should, be doing things that help the environment, but I really just want to wear these clothes because they're affordable and I really like them. So I think that it's definitely something that has taken a backseat in the consumers' mindset, but it's not that it's not important to them. It's just what they can afford right now, just where they're at.
It's completely, I kind of get where they're coming from. I used to be one of those people who's like, when no one's looking, I'm going to run into Topshop and buy something new.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone, hide my bag. Yeah, I completely get where they're coming from. So I think sustainability, we need to make it a bit more consumer friendly and kind of communicate it in a way that it is accessible and it's not daunting to these kinds of like mass market, fast fashion consumers.
Exactly.
How do you think brands can go about doing that?
It's a marketing push. I think it's the way that they present their brands to the public. I think it can be done really, really successfully through different campaigns and through different brand ambassadors that they work with that maybe are sustainability is in their message anyway. And so partnering with those people that can kind of spread awareness that this brand you didn't realize is sustainable and just kind of put it out that way in a more approachable manner.
And I think for smaller businesses and designers, it's going to be a lot easier because they can build a sustainable brand right from the greenfields. So they can create a really exciting product, and it's not kind of trying to push it in and fit it into this kind of jigsaw piece of sustainability. It's just natural and it's organic. So it's still a really exciting new discovery of a product, of a brand, but it just happens to be sustainable as well.
And now looking at a different aspect of the fashion industry, obviously events and marketing are a huge aspect of the fashion world. How do you think the future of that looks?
I think with the future of the fashion industry, for events and marketing people, it's not so much now about planning. It's about learning these new technologies that are going to be out there, because that's how events are going to be presented. So I think that's going to be really interesting, is these new platforms that emerge and these new softwares and technologies that people kind of have to become tech people that didn't used to. As a planner, I used to use Excel. That was the extent of my tech background. I would make a guest list in Excel, and I would, just like use that as my planning format. And now the fact that events are taking place on these tech platforms, I think it's going to be really interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see who fills those roles, because it may be more tech people than fashion people, if that makes sense.
From my perspective as well, coming from a designer, I did my degree, I finished it 3 years ago, and now maybe my degree might be a bit more irrelevant because I don't know how to design digitally. Whereas someone who doesn't have a background in fashion design but is a really tech person might be able to fill a job opening for a fashion brand better than I would. So it's really about kind of like keeping on top of the technologies and really making sure that it's within your skill set. And I know it's something that I'm looking to do, is learning how to do Clothes 3D and actually develop my patterns and my samples and my collections digitally now, because I just know that it's so important.
I do some freelancing and consulting. I've worked with brands that asked if I've ever planned a virtual event, and I'm like, well, no, for what? Like, I wouldn't have had to. So now it's like really just like keeping up on industry news and seeing what type of events are out there. And then once you learn about them, to learn the technology, it's a new form of educating yourself in every aspect, from the events people to the designers, to the PR people. I'm sure that they have different strategies and platforms that they now have to use as well. So I think that it's a new learning opportunity for every single area of the industry.
Does this feel like a tipping point to you, or do you feel like in-person designers will always be needed, in-person events will be the staple? Or do you think this is sort of the start of the technological revolution of fashion across the board?
I think this is a tipping point. I think technology is so much more sustainable. It streamlines your supply chain. It's just really the obvious thing to do. So I think there's still going to be a few years when people are actually designing and sampling and doing it in person, quite in the tangible kind of world. But I think once like the Gen Zs kind of grow up and they get into the workplace and they're digitally native and they know how to do these things like intrinsically, and I think it's just all going to shift.
So I'd actually be interested to hear what other people think. But from the events perspective, I think that in-person events are going to bounce back. I think it's going to take a while because that's actually where this virus is spreading, is in-person events. But I think people are sick of sitting in front of their screens and watching things. I personally, I don't get so jazzed about attending virtual events anymore, just because it's been done. It's you know, you're sitting in the same place while you're seeing people and you're networking. It's just not the same as being in a room with people. There's like an energy.
Yeah, the novelty's worn off, hasn't it?
It has. I from an events person, I'm like, I don't even want to attend these events anymore. So I think that people are going to be eager to start attending events in person again. And I think it's just going to be on the brand and the people behind the events to make sure that it's safe and to make sure that they're taking all protocols and things like that. And I know the few brands that have had in-person events have been, you know, the seats are spaced out 6 feet. They're taking everyone's temperatures. They're making testing mandatory, things like that. But I think that people are going to be ready, at least by next summer, for these in-person events to reemerge.
I mean, I'm so ready. I miss my life of kind of going to events, having a free glass of wine or prosecco, being able to kind of meet new people or see my friends or colleagues and just have a chat. I mean, the virtual events I find good because they're so accessible. I mean, I live outside of London and it takes me ages to get on a train. So I find I can do a lot more events, find out a lot more things, have a lot more experiences when I'm doing it online. But I do miss that personal connection and experience that you can have. So I'd love for there to be kind of like this balance of both.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, Aasia, because I think that this has been a really great time for people outside of the major cities. So I live in New York City, so it's like nothing for me to be able to attend an event, and they're just everywhere. But for people that are outside of these cities, this has probably been a really great moment for them because they feel like they've gotten a piece of the industry and they've been able to attend panels and conversations with designers and business leaders that they admire that they would never have been able to attend before. So it's good for me to think about it from that perspective because I get so jaded being in New York City where most of these events happen and they're all at my fingertips.
I think in general it's been a good time for like the circle, the perimeter of cities within like 2 hours as such. I think you're going to get a lot of people that can just move out to those cheaper areas and just crack on from there.
It's insane how much quieter. I mean, it's definitely not dead as, you know, it's being depicted on the news, but a lot of people have left the city and they're buying houses and they have more land and more space. But they're moving to places like Connecticut and, just upstate where they can easily get to events or even work when offices reopen if they need to.
Okay, and from a personal perspective, what do you two want to see develop and change within fashion within, say, the next 12 months? What do you want to see the focus on?
I want to see kind of more exciting, innovative kinds of business models. Like, I'm really excited by all the different platforms that are popping up, like rentals, subscriptions, secondhand, vintage, just really interesting ways of acquiring products. So it's not just like unique products, it's just things where I can spend less money or I can get something that I thought I would never be on sale again. So I'm really looking forward to kind of the innovative way that I can just get a piece of these products. And I just hope that brands can kind of get on board with these platforms or work with these platforms to kind of make that more accessible to people like me, students, not a lot of spending money.
I'm excited to see this reemergence of new designers and models, specifically a diverse group entering this scene. I think that there was a period where we saw the same photographers, we saw the same models, the same girls walked in every show. And I think that now that things are changing, there's really an opportunity for people to bring in new people and to have their shows be a little bit more representative of the human race. And I think that diversity is, it's such a big topic and everyone is talking about it, but I really am excited to see these newcomers come into the space and be able to actually have their time.
I think we've really decentralized fashion from London, from New York, from Paris. So all of these exciting brands can be popping up anywhere and everywhere. And it's not just for the insiders who live in a typical kind of area.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a topic that we'll be coming back to again and again on Tag Talks Next Up in Fashion. Thank you everyone so much for tuning into this episode. We've been Tag Talks Next Up in Fashion, presented by the House of Tag. We hope this episode has been valuable and fun for you, and we'll see you all next time.